Democratic Club of Sunnyvale.
This meeting is being recorded.
Right, great. So welcome everyone, and welcome to our elected officials. We have several here, including Councilmember Landisell, school board trustees for a number of districts. Some of them are speakers here today, but we have for Foothill Anza, Patrick Ahrens, for Fremont Union High School District, Naomi Nakano-Matsumoto, and Sunnyvale School District, Eileen Lee and Bridget Watson. And we also have a number of board and commissioners. Welcome to everyone here today. And before we get started with the program, just we want to go through a couple of announcements. For the club, we do have a nominating committee, and Cheryl Bartholomew, who is on with us today, is chairing that committee. We do need a couple more members if you're interested in being on the nominating committee. We have board elections coming up in May. So you can reach out to me or Cheryl or any of the board members if you're interested to serve on that nominating committee. All right, and any other announcements? Or actually, I'll pass it to Cheryl. I know she's got an announcement.
Very quickly, in the interest of sustainability, and I say as being trying to be a good steward of Mother Earth, my yard is going to be on the Growing Natives tour this year. And if you're interested, there's no cost. If you're interested, mine is going to be on the April 2nd date, which is a Sunday from 10 to 4. And just go to Growing Natives Tour 2023. And when it comes up, just look for the link to register. So would love to see any of you there. And tell me, if you show up, tell me you're a Democratic Club member if I don't know you. Thank you.
All right, anyone else have other announcements they want to share?
Well, we can probably highlight our April meeting, which is kind of a special meeting on anti-Semitism, which is rearing its ugly head as usual, but there have been incidents recently at both Stanford and at Fremont High School, among other places. So we're going to devote a meeting to this because of the subject matter. We're moving the meeting to Sunday, the 16th. Yeah, April 16th. So, and we're going to have a number of speakers on that topic, which we'll be announcing. So it's kind of a special meeting. It is also special because will be our first in-person meeting for some time. It'll be a hybrid meeting hosted at Gail's clubhouse, and we'll send out information about that too. So.
Great, thank you. Any other announcements? All right, don't see any right now. So we are honored to have a facilitator, Tara Martin-Milius, former council member of Sunnyvale, to lead us in this panel discussion and Q&A session today. So thank you, Tara, and I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. I do have a privilege to be able to do this today. And I'm just going to give a little bit of an overview of how the process works so that everybody has some expectations here. So today is all about school equity in Sunnyvale. And we're looking for a comprehensive overview to help us understand all these kind of very complex and intertwined issues. To help us with that is Peggy Brewster, founder of Sunnyvale for Education Equality. Sunnyvale Education and Equality. Honorable Bridget Watson, past president of the Sunnyvale Elementary School Board. Honorable Naomi Nakano-Matsumoto, serving on the Fremont High School board, and Honorable Patrick Ahrens, serving on the Foothill Anza College board. So we've got all the levels of our education system engaged here. And because this whole thing is very broad and very deep, we've chunked it into 3 areas: transit, nutrition, and location. And what we'll do is have 3 rounds, 1 each for each of those, acknowledging that everything is still intertwined, but this will give you a chance to ask questions after each segment if you have questions. And Mike will be looking at the chat, so please post your questions into the chat. And then when we have a Q&A session after each of the discussion rounds, then we'll move on to Q&A and then on to the next round. So let's say I think that covers everything, except I am going to we have to limit the Q&A to 8 to 10 minutes. So if it goes on a little bit longer, I may cut that off just so we can get through the major elements of the equity issues that we've heard so far anyway. So thanks very much. And would you please remain muted unless you're invited to speak? I think so. We'll start with just a 1-minute introduction for each of our members, and then we'll go to Peggy, who will lay the foundation for our discussions today, and then we'll start with the panel discussion on round 1. Okay, so let's see, is that 1 minute? So let's start with, let's go ahead and start with you, Peggy. This is Peggy Brewster.
Hello, my name is Peggy Brewster. I live in the Snail neighborhood. I taught 8th and 2nd grades in the Mountain View Wisman School District until 2020. Because of COVID, I decided not to continue teaching there, where I also would have taken my kids to school. So instead, we signed up for our neighborhood Sunnyvale School, which was the best decision for our family and helped us to feel more connected with our community. Our 8-year-old son, Case, is a 2nd grader at Bishop Elementary, and a 3.5-year-old daughter, Andy, is in preschool part-time. I serve on the Sunnyvale Education Foundation as the grants administrator, which has helped me see our schools with a wider lens. I'm here to talk about a group I started called Sunnyvale for Equity in Education, or SEE.
Thank you, Peggy. Bridget?
Hi, I'm Bridget Watson. I'm on the Sunnyvale School District Board of Education. So that is TK through 8th grade. And I'm just started my 2nd term. I ran unopposed. Now I'm in Trustee Area 1, which actually has both middle schools and 5 elementary schools in it. So when we did our trustee areas, we tried to make every school have multiple advocates. But I do live in the Cherry Chase neighborhood, and I taught up in the far north of Sunnyvale, up in at our Fairwood school. So I'm really excited to be here today. And I'm also working volunteering as the county's school board association, like Santa Clara County School Board Association organization. I'm their president this year. So that means I do programming and a lot of communication and get to work with people all across the county, which I absolutely love and have just learned so much from. So it's really improved my ability to serve the kids in Sunnyvale. Thanks.
Thank you, Bridget. Naomi.
Hi, everyone. I'm Naomi Nakano-Matsumoto. I'm serving or started my 2nd term as a Fremont Union High School District trustee. I'm a social worker by profession and have worked in a variety of capacities, always rooted in social justice and racial justice. My kids are 3rd generation Sunnyvale residents. They went to Sunnyvale School District, and we live in the Cumberland neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi. And Patrick.
Well, good afternoon, Sunnyvale. My name is Patrick Ahrens. I'm the president of the Foothill Anza Community College Board of Trustees. I am also my day job is I serve as the district director for California State Assembly member Evan Lowe, who, as many of you know, with redistricting is Sunnyvale's representative to the state legislature. So we are located in our district office in Cupertino, but the new district serves Cupertino, Sunnyvale, San Jose, and Santa Clara. And so we've been going full speed and getting to know everybody in the new area. And we've got a really great bill package that I can get into at another meeting, or if you want to contact me, I can put my contact information in the chat. But this is the first cycle in November of 2022 that we went to area elections. We were elected at large, which I can get into a little later, but it's also the first time me as the Sunnyvale representative on the Board of Trustees is the first time that the Foothill Dems, the college district, has had specific one from Sunnyvale and Sunnyvale representation since the beginning of the college district many decades ago. So get into more on why that's important later, but it's really great to be here. And I just want to thank Peggy and Bridget and Naomi, 3 leaders who I really respect in this space. It's really an honor to be talking to you all about these really important issues today. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. And now we'll turn it over to Peggy, who will give us lay the foundations for the discussion. And Peggy, if you want to cue up your screen, great.
Right there. Okay.
Perfect.
Oh. Where's my whole thing to do? There we go. There we go. All right. Thank you for inviting me to speak about Sunnyvale for Equity in Education. I hope that you all leave interested and ready to participate in advocacy with us. C is a new group, just about 4 months old. We're made up of community members seeking more equitable public school access and quality throughout Sunnyvale. I want to acknowledge that our advocacy currently focuses on the high school district, but as we grow in capacity, we as a group, and I personally intend to also influence Sunnyvale School District, where there are many similar patterns of inequity. I'd like to explain how our group came to be by showing a few maps. The first map is a map of the Fremont Union High School District boundaries, which covers some, but not all areas of Sunnyvale, Cupertino, San Jose, Saratoga, and Santa Clara. Most FUHSD students are Sunnyvale and Cupertino residents. I've added a blue line on El Camino Real. You can see the location of the 5 FUHSD schools. Lynbrook is furthest south. Moving north, we have Monte Vista, Cupertino, and Homestead, and Fremont is the northernmost high school. Although the district boundaries extend over 5 miles north of Fremont High, there are no other high schools up north. Okay, now I'll add in the 8 elementary and 2 middle schools that make up the Sunnyvale School District. These are the main feeder schools for Fremont and Homestead High Schools. In green, we see Lakewood and Fairwood Elementary Schools in the northeast, and San Miguel and Bishop a bit further south. Those kids go to Columbia Middle School, which is the top purple circle. Further south above El Camino, we have Ellis and Vargas, and South of El Camino, Cumberland, and Cherry Chase Elementary Schools. These students generally go to Sunnyvale Middle School. In general, students that attend CMS go to Fremont High, and those attending SMS go to Homestead High. Finally, I will add in a gray square, Sunnyvale High School. It's nestled in right by Bishop, San Miguel, and Columbia Middle. It's just a 10-minute walk from my house. In the years following Prop 13, the district decided that they had to close one of the 6 high schools. The board unanimously chose to close SHS in 1981. The minutes show that the trustees at the time were concerned with how students in the northernmost parts of Sunnyvale would get to school, and worried that some may not complete their education because of the challenges in getting to school. The board discussed how the district should ensure that these students have transportation. According to former students, transportation was robust for a short time after the closure. However, 2 years later, in 1981, they declared 2 large school buses surplus, and they were sold. The land that was formerly Sunnyvale High School is still owned by the district, but currently leased to the King's Academy. Sunnyvale High School had the most racially diverse student body of the 6 campuses and highest numbers of students with low socioeconomic status. SHS test scores were also the lowest. When discussing closing other schools, parents of those students voiced outrage at the thought of sending their kids to school in that part of town with those people. The board justified that having lower performing students from SHS go to the better schools would make them stronger students because they would have a higher academic bar if surrounded by better performing students. Because of the SHS closure 42 years ago, the commute to high school has been and continues to be very long for many students in North Sunnyvale. A student in Morse Park may have to take 2 buses and leave for school an hour before the morning bell to get there on time. Students taking VTA report constant worry about unreliable transportation and tardiness. Many students don't feel safe riding VTA with the general public, especially when it is dark. Some parents report spending over 2 hours a day driving their kids back and forth to school and extracurriculars. Some parents adjust their schedules or don't work in order to accommodate their kids' need to be driven to and from school. Many families don't have that luxury of an adult that is free to shuttle the kids back and forth during the day. And as a result, those students can't participate in extracurriculars and school activities as much as they would want. The racial and economic makeup of the communities are very different as well. Right now, there is an estate zone for Monte Vista that Zillow lists for $5.13 million. At the same time, there's a mobile home zoned for Fremont that's listed at $220,000. In this chart created from the newly released School Accountability Report Card data, or SARC, you can see that Fremont in blue has the highest percentage of low social economic status, or SES, Hispanic and Latinx and English language learners than the other schools in the district. Almost a third of students at Fremont are considered low SES, while it's just 7% at Monte Vista, which are the green bars on the chart. We also see that the dropout and chronic absenteeism rates are much higher at Fremont. So this chart shows the percentage of students proficient in language arts, math, and science are far lower at Fremont than the other schools. In math, 42% are proficient at Fremont versus 94% at Lynbrook. At Lynbrook, 95% of students are proficient in language arts. At Fremont, it's 63% that are proficient. Finally, we see the rankings of the high schools in the district and state. While the district admin proudly told us that all 5 FUHSD schools score in the top quartile of California schools, which is true, there is a huge disparity between the Cupertino schools and the Sunnyvale schools. Within the district, you'll notice that the southernmost school is ranked number 1, with ranks dropping as the school locations are further north. Whereas Lynbrook and Monte Vista are ranked numbers 11 and 14 in the state, and Cupertino and Homestead are also well in the top 100 California schools, Fremont is 426th. We see huge disparities between schools within the same district. The closure of SHS 42 years ago continues to harm generations of North Sunnyvale families. C is looking to correct systemic injustices caused by the SHS closing. We seek to identify and address other factors that keep already underserved populations from thriving. We also ask that resources are appropriately and equitably allocated to the schools serving Sunnyvale students. In recent years, enrollment has declined so much at Lynbrook and Monte Vista, they've had to transfer students from Cupertino and Homestead to keep the doors open. Meanwhile, bond money from Measure G passed overwhelmingly by Sunnyvale, not Cupertino residents, is being used to build 2 new buildings at Lynbrook totaling $10 million. Over $42 million is earmarked to modernize buildings at Monte Vista, while there are no plans for a new high school in Sunnyvale. Our current state of Sunnyvale Public Schools floats in the reality and equality models of this graphic. C would like to push us towards equity and ultimately justice. By correcting systemic barriers in education, we'd like to move towards justice by correcting systemic barriers in education caused by the closing of our neighborhood high school over 4 decades ago, and other factors that keep poor and darker skinned people with less sense of belonging, support, and opportunities. The next slides go into more detail about our advocacy goals, current progress, and ways to be involved. I'm not going to talk about them right now, but they will be distributed later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peggy. That was a wonderful basis for us to start our conversation and to start our panel on this. Naomi, since high school is one of the most immediate issues, could you start us off with that?
Okay, and it's all related to transportation, right?
Yes,
During
this is
session.
about, yeah, this is
Okay.
as much as possible.
Okay, so first of all, I want to say thank you to the Dem Club for hosting this meeting. I think it's a really important discussion and a discussion that really needs to be had. Secondly, I thank Peggy and the C group for bringing, I don't want to say bringing, I think pushing the envelope on the inequities that are happening in our school district. It's something that I've seen before I became a school board member, and something I pushed for and was part of my platform in running. As far as, and then I just want to, before I lose my thought, I love that equity picture, but to me, it's still missing something. And what's missing is that, to me, true equity is that those kids are in the seats, in the stands, not standing along the side. And so I think that we need to keep pushing and pushing for that goal. And then even beyond that, being in the first class section, I guess, or whatever, but we're not there yet. So as far as what Peggy and C has done is a lot of research, and really appreciate, there's nothing that I would argue against. I mean, I totally agree with everything that they said. Transportation is an issue. I've ridden my bike with the Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition, along with Council Member Sell. We've done that ride. We know I was planning to do the bus ride, but just didn't get around to doing that. But our superintendent actually did a couple of weeks ago with one of our other school board members. You know, I'm not sure if they saw what our students are saying and our parents are saying they saw. But I think that that's where someone from the community needs to ride with them, to show them, because you become a tourist, not part of the community. So from one of the things that I've heard, and then I trust, Tara, you're going to tell me when that my time is up, right? Oh, you're on mute.
I'm not particularly going to time you. I'm looking at the overall time, okay, because I think you have the largest chunk of this right now.
Okay.
And then the elementary schools and then the college.
Okay. So when asked about, I was always told that our students who qualified at Fremont High School were able to get bus passes. Now, that's still not real clear to me, who is getting them and how they're getting them. And a part of it is, I think that, and again, you know, I want you to be aware that I'm wearing two hats. One is a social justice advocate and a resident of Sunnyvale, but also, you know, I was elected to be a school board member, so I need to come from that perspective too. I think there's a lot of information that is not put out to the community about the bus passes, how to get them, and what it costs from. And again, maybe some misinformation that is out there. And so the school or the district needs to do a better job to really educate our families as to who qualifies, who doesn't qualify, what all that means for our students. The other thing is, for those who are able to drive, parking is another issue. And so Fremont has very limited parking space, just like all the other schools. But the the availability of parking is another issue. And so it takes our students a longer time to find parking. And, it's been asked that we look at it. Seniors get first priority, but you could be a senior that lives a mile away and drive and get first priority to park, as opposed to someone who's coming from North Sunnyvale and is a junior and is not able to get a parking pass. And so looking at it from, we've asked that the equity committee of the school look at that. And so I think part of this is that we need to keep pushing and not just bring it up once, but that's where it becomes the most effective, because in some ways we just put a Band-Aid on it and move forward. And that's not gonna address systemic things that have been going on for many, many years. And when I was campaigning, I walked the neighborhoods in North Sunnyvale. That is where I concentrated. And I would get upset every time I'd come home, because I'd say, those kids live right across the school from Sunnyvale High School, and they have to walk or get themselves to Fremont High School. And even with a car, because I drove myself to those neighborhoods, it's not an easy route, and it's not a safe route. And even though I did that bike ride, I would not send my kids, if they were in high school, to ride that route. People say it's safe. I don't think it's safe. And so, and then, we have to look at, well, what is equitable? And I don't think we're all at that definition yet as to what's equitable for transportation, what's equitable for different things. It's going to look differently for every issue area. But anyways, I'll pass it on to my peers so that they can.
So Bridget, would you like to pick that up there and expand on that from your point of view?
So I'm a little confused. Are we talking about transportation or
transit of all types? Yes.
So
since you're representing the
and actually,
schools.
just to be clear, the only person who can speak for the Board of Education is the president. So I'm speaking as a trustee with myself and my experience. But our school district just revised our transportation policy, because during the pandemic, a lot of issues like food insecurity, housing insecurity, transportation, those just became so much more apparent to all of us, across the country, probably, about what our families were facing, and especially as we started reopening schools to in-person instruction. So we had added a transportation line from Ellison Elementary to come over to Sunnyvale Middle School, because our middle schools have the widest attendance areas. I think 3 miles, is about the farthest end to end, across as we go across. I might be a little off on that, but it's a 3 mile radius ish. So anyway, we were getting reports that there's many under-resourced families that live sort of in that pocket behind El Camino, across from In-N-Out, in the Ellis attendance area. They were having a lot of difficulty getting to school. So we provided the bus, as during the pandemic, when we first reopened to in-person instruction. We were able to provide it this year. And we started realizing that the students who lived over in the Fairwood and Lakewood neighborhood were not getting bus service. And our initial, in our old policy, one of the ideas was we would have these safety zones. So if you had to cross major highways, or, busy streets, really multiple lane streets, we would provide bus service. So for instance, there was a Lakewood bus getting students from Lakewood, from a neighborhood near Lakewood that wasn't too far away from Lakewood, but you'd have to get to it through a circuitous route to get to Lakewood. But there was nothing going from these two feeder schools over to the middle school. So we arranged to get bus service this year for them. So we started looking at there were some grants available from the federal government for transportation. We started switching out our buses from gas and hybrid to being electrical buses. We decided to hire another bus driver, and the request initially was to hire another bus driver next school year, because we applied for and got a grant for an additional bus. Buses are about $250,000 one-time cost, and we have to, with benefits and everything, we have to plan for about $100,000 for a bus driver, which is pretty similar to what we budget for a teacher. Okay, so we've got this additional bus driver. We have some additional routes. And the idea was, well, let's make sure that the routes are going to the kids who really need it. And so we revised our policy. It's imperfect because right now we don't keep track of who's riding the bus. So we don't have any way of knowing where the kids who are riding the bus are really coming from. And so we created a priority system. So the kids in those safety zones have very first priority. The kids who are about 1.5 miles away from their school will have the second priority. And then from there, if there's a ton of kids who live 1.5 miles away from school, then we would start looking at income level. We would look at English learners. And part of the reason we would do that is because we know that our English learner community and our low income community, which also happens to be our Hispanic community, was the hardest hit during the pandemic. And they actually, like, if test scores were low before, or if there was like a quote unquote achievement gap, which I would actually probably refer to as an opportunity gap, if that existed before, since the pandemic, or because of the pandemic or whatever, that gap has just widened. It's completely evident that even though we do a lot, it is not nearly enough for what needs to happen. And one of the things is getting the kids to the school. We're going to go into some other issues as well, but like food insecurity, for example, we have students in our school who the only time they eat is when they're at school. They don't need ski week off. They're not going to Tahoe for the week. They're not going out to the beach. They're not going to Mexico, like for vacation. They're probably sitting at home, maybe on an iPad or maybe watching TV. Or like I know for a fact that we have some middle school students who go to SMS who actually go and help their relatives work in the fields, and they're out picking vegetables in the Central Valley.
Could we hold that for the nutrition?
Sure. Okay.
segment?
So anyway, we have a policy, but
it's a
we're not
biggie.
sure. Yeah, we're not sure how it's going to roll out because, like I said, we don't really have the numbers, so we don't have routes. And the question is, is what we have enough? We don't really know. And then the other issue for transportation, which probably also affects, I'm sure it affects the high school districts, are the opportunities for after-school tutoring and after-school enrichment opportunities or clubs. And as you know, like particularly for middle school students, but even with our elementary students, those are the kids where we want them to feel really connected to school. We want them to feel supported, and there is a lot of academic recovery that really needs to happen with extended time, as well as in the classroom. So we absolutely need our students who are under-resourced for transportation to have access to the after-school things, which they don't currently have. So that's something we had it 4 years ago for our middle schools, and I'm just not clear, because we don't know the utilization, whether or not we will have it for the upcoming school year.
Thank you. And Patrick, you may have some thoughts on this as well, even though you're not quite in the same bind.
Well, yeah, certainly, I mean, all the schools that we're talking about are eventually feeder schools into Anza or Foothill College, two of the top performing community colleges in the state. And we have some really good partnerships that are existing, such as dual enrollment with FHUSD district and most of our high school districts, actually. as well as other high school districts outside of our service area, because Anza and Foothill are such an attractive option when it comes to students in our area trying to move forward on their education and really have that accessibility to higher education. And in regards to transportation on this subject, when I was the student trustee at Anza College many years ago, we passed an eco pass where we, every single student pays a small $4 or $5 fee as part of their enrollment, and you get free VTA bus pass and light rail. And so, existing, I think that there are programs out there that overlap in some of the kind of conversations we're talking about. And I think for so long, we've had siloed conversations in education, or the Foothill, Anza communication, we just kind of did our own thing and just worried about the student basically when they got there, not really talking to the high school district or the elementary school district. And I think that's changing. I think there's a lot of conversations to be had about equity in education in Sunnyvale and beyond. I think, but for example, right now, that passed when I was a student. I'm now on the board, and if we have dual enrollment where you can take community college classes online or in person at Anza, for example, and still be a high school student. And so, not quite relative to, sort of the high school busing system, which is, as you can see, a lot more complicated than I realized. For our, if you're a high school student, you can get free VTA bus passes if you're an dual enrolled student in that program. I think there's some solutions there. I don't think that those solutions will work for every student, and they haven't, because there's a lot of these programs that already we're doing that we just struggle to get the information out there about what services we can offer, because we kind of have a little bit more flexibility as a community college. But I think that there are a lot of creative solutions that we can delve into a little later, but those are sort of the things that I'm thinking about how can we sort of expand access to existing services that we are already providing.
Thank you. That actually kind of frames our time right now on that. Any of you have any other thoughts that you want to toss in before we go to Q&A?
I just would really like to say that even though we are talking about transportation, that is a short-term solution for the students in the who live in North Sunnyvale. And I think, as one community member put it, we are basically funneling our kids into the into the southern schools of Fremont Union High School District, and they're keeping those schools afloat. And it is a grave injustice, and it's an example of a systemic racism problem that's very difficult to unwind. And I just really hope this group understands that we're really hoping that it's not a whether or not to unwind that, but how to, because it is just so completely critical for our families and the kids.
Thank you. And we'll go to questions. I think, do we have any questions in the chat that came up?
I think Eileen has her hand up.
Yeah, I see Eileen has her hand up. I just want to make sure that we're getting everything. And Eileen, we'll let you go first, and we'll give everybody about 2 minutes.
Sure. I just wanted to highlight Dan's comment in the chat. He said that even with the free bus pass, it's still a long walk from the nearest bus stop, 8-minute walk to the 21, 20+ minute walk to the 83 and the 523. I live on the farthest northern end of Sunnyvale. I live in the townhouse complex that is the farthest north before everything turns into Google and industry. And from my neighborhood, you do have to take 2 buses. You have to take the 56 down to the 55, and only from there can you go to Fremont. And the children from my neighborhood who have to make this walk, it's workable, but I think the problem is just that it's not something that the other kids have to think about. It's not something that Cupertino children have to think about because they can, for the most part, walk to school. It's an extra barrier that doesn't have to and shouldn't be there. And it's a barrier, especially for the children in this area who are for the most part low income or Hispanic or both. It's unnecessary and it's unjust. And we put so much effort into making sure that our kids can learn once they get to school. But if they can't get to school, that like defeats the entire purpose. We can teach them, we know that now after COVID, but it's harder. But we can't feed them. We can't give them the mental health services they need if they're not there. And until we find a solution to this, to getting kids to school in an equitable way, it all has to start with that. It all has to start with the transportation piece. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Eileen. And Murli, we'll move to you. The Honorable Murli Srinivasan, one of our council members who also had a hand in one of the study issues for this.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about, Tara. Thank you very much.
You still only have 2 minutes, though.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll make it really quick, but 2 minutes starts now. Thank you very much. As Tara said, I am a council member of Sunnyvale Council, but I'm speaking on my behalf, not on behalf of the council. As Tara said, I sponsored a study issue for exploring shuttle for Northern Sunnyvale students to come to Homestead High or Fremont High. The study issue is ranked very high by my colleagues on the council. Thank you very much, everybody. But this is where the real action starts from now on. Everybody should participate. It's not Sunnyvale, it's not City of Sunnyvale's problem alone. It's the Fremont Union High School District, High School. See, everybody, including Santa Clara County Board of Education, we all have to pitch together and then make it a viable solution for our students. That is very, very important, not only for equity, education, and all the other things we have been talking about. Thank you very much. That's all the thing. Thank you.
1 minute and 10 seconds.
Thank you.
I do thank you, Peggy, for the call out to Dan. I did see the note in the chat, and thank you, Dan, for bringing up the student point of view and the issues that you're facing. And also like to thank you, Peggy, for posting that the issues with getting the tickets from VTA, you can't get through on the website. We have some major maladjustments with that. So Naomi, go ahead.
Okay. I agree with everything that everyone is saying. One of the things that we have to do, going back to some of my comments I made earlier, is really look at what equity means, right? And so one of the arguments within, or one of the statements that gets made is that it's a 20-minute bus ride, right? But like the others have said, it doesn't account for the walk to the bus stop. And so, I've asked the district to reframe that to say door to door, what does that mean, right? Because if you just take into account the bus ride, it's not looking at the full picture. The other thing that I'm going to commit to do is that, we hear that VTA has been really good in working with our school district and will increase bus stops and other things at our request, but I have not talked to VTA. I'm not saying that we're not, but I need to hear firsthand, what they are doing for us. And right now we are lucky because we have 2 people that represent Sunnyvale on the VTA board. And I think, as I had said earlier at this training session, we need to strike when the iron's hot, because Councilmember Dean is on the VTA board and Supervisor Lee is on the VTA board. And that's something pretty rare to happen. And so they can help, be advocates on that committee if we look at asking them for their support.
Okay, thank you, Naomi. And Bridget.
Yeah, I just I just wanted to like quickly say that, you know, from VTA's point of view, they may very well feel that they're very efficient and that they have buses running and they're routed appropriately. But you know, I know that our school district is asking the high school district, like, hey, how are our kids doing? You know, and we've really reached across. I think the trustees are very interested in collaborating and having some sort of a, you know, information sharing session, or even just a equity workshop or something. Like we could, you know, who knows what we'll end up with. But we are concerned about our North Sunnyvale kids and all of our kids, actually, especially our Hispanic students and low-income students who are, from stories that we've heard, they are not very well served, you know, as we sort of hand them off to high school. Now, I will be the first to admit that I think that people could argue when I heard the mayor, like the fallout from the mayoral election in Chicago, and they said, hey, you know, third graders who are African American in Chicago cannot read, and that's child abuse. I'm sure all the educators thought, and all the principals and all the trustees and everybody thought, God, how can they even say that? But I mean, because I'm sure those people were working really hard, and I know our teachers and staff are very intentional and are working extremely hard, into the point of burnout and exhaustion. But what we're doing is just not quite right. And so getting back to VTA, they might think that they're running, the kids who actually are standing in that line for the bus may or may not get on that bus, and they may feel really good about their like time that it takes them to get on the bus. But we don't really know. I don't know that this school district has been tracking whether or not, like by zip code, like how they're doing for attendance and tardies. You know, if you have too many tardies in high school, you get detention, right? And so some kids just don't even go, like, oh, I missed the bus, it's not worth going, I'm going to get in trouble, I'm going to have my mom call me in, so, or call myself in as my mother, I mean, whatever they do. So I mean, it's just very, you know, we just don't have all the data points we need, because like in our school district, once we start asking for things, it's scary that it's really hard to get that hard information that you need to make a change. And then it's really hard to get a group thought partnership so that you can make the changes together that will last a long time and be impactful. So we're in that ugly phase right now. And I just really want to commend everyone for being willing to like, just even discuss it.
Okay, so actually that winds up our Q&A time. So if we move on to general,
Okay. Sorry, just add one more thing before we move on.
Yes.
So the district is planning to have a study session on transportation. We were looking at April. We're still striving for April, but we have two big probably issues that are going to come up that we need to be focused on. So it may go into May, but I will let you know when that study session is scheduled, and I hope that all of you will come and attend. Thank you.
Okay, that would be great. And we can get that out also through the Dems Club, I believe. Thanks, Mike. So then going back, Bridget, to some of the things you brought up a little bit earlier, this next segment is generally about the nutrition issues that the kids are facing. And I know they're all intertwined. So I thought since you're the, you have a big stake in this one, so you might like to start us off with that.
Yeah, you know, I'm sure Eileen can jump in a little bit as well, because we just had a meeting with Senator Wahab, and she spoke up a little bit about the student nutrition program. But again, we're coming like through the pandemic, we had schools that, particularly our Title I schools, they really understood the needs of the community. Like, for example, San Miguel was like 85% free and reduced lunch kids, which means that they were like at below 300% of like some meal calculation. Like they're a highly under-resourced school. that already had some partnerships with community organizations. And so, you know, a couple other trustees and I were over there bagging groceries immediately. People from the community were out using donation money and purchasing food and really giving a lot of input on, you know, what kind of food should go in the bag and what was culturally responsive for families and stuff, because almost everybody lost their job. Almost, I think she said like 80 or 90% of the people who had jobs lost their job that first week of the pandemic when everything shut down. The pandemic really opened our eyes to that, and we had the opportunity to move to universal feeding. And so we did not have to ask anyone for their eligibility. If you brought in a baby that was age 0 to a kid who's 18, we could feed them. And all across the county, there were different ways of doing that. There were weekly grocery, like where they would take the student money for food, and they give you a box of cereal and a gallon of milk and some fruit, and they give you stuff to, you know, make a lunch. Versus like our district did a meal every day that you could come by the school and pick it up and take it with you. And so there were all different delivery models. And when we came back to school, we were really lucky. The state of California doubled up and said, anything the federal government isn't reimbursing you for, we will reimburse you to that level. So we currently do not charge for student meals, but it's had the unintentional consequence of disincentivizing people from filling out their free lunch meal paperwork. So what that means is some schools may be losing their Title I funding because they no longer have proof of income level of their families. So it's been very challenging. Our school district still puts in close to $1 million a year to supplement for food, because labor is our most expensive cost, and there's no differential across the country. So we're paying the same, whatever they're paying people in Kansas, that's what we're paying them, whatever that reimbursable rate is. And our what we pay for labor is much higher. We're trying to make a move to scratch kitchens. But, you know, different districts really have different mentalities on student nutrition. So during the pandemic, I think Fremont Union High School District does have a student nutrition director who worked in close partnership with curriculum instruction and really focused on getting highly nutritious food out to kids. And for our district, we also served a lot of meals, and those people worked really hard, but we don't have a student nutrition director. I don't know whether that is in the cards for us, but we rely on, I guess I would say, like, it's almost disincentivizing to push out, like, it's basically every student's right to have a meal, right? So that they can think and learn. And so you can get breakfast or brunch, and you can get lunch, but we are constantly looking for ways that we can get that flexibility to feed more kids, right? Like, so on a half day, for example, for kindergarten or early release day, lunch has to be in person. Like, we can't give anything to go the way the rules are written now. And just student lunch, we just have so many kids where it is their only meal. So do we, like, during the summer, do we just provide student lunch for our summer school students, or will they allow community feeding for anyone who shows up? And how do we track that? And how do we get reimbursed for that? And so it's complicated, it's tricky, and it's expensive, but it's just a huge need right now, because if the kids haven't eaten, they just can't learn as well. And I actually last thing I'll say on this is, really, I did have a teacher tell me that by food more above and beyond transportation, if we are not getting nutrition into the kids who need it most, that is completely institutionalized racism. And it is completely holding and creating a class of students who will just be underserved and underperform because they are underserved, and will not be successful in the future, and could impact their health their whole lives. So I just don't know how to lean into it more without
Well, I think you've mentioned a lot of things there. I see Peggy and Naomi also doing a lot of nodding here. Would you like to jump in there, Peggy?
So what I know about nutrition in Sunnyvale School District is that ever since the food was provided to all families since the pandemic, some kids go to school and they have, snacks and lunch packed by their families, by their parents. But then they choose to go, instead of eating, what the parents pack, they can go and get like juice and pan dulce, for example. So they'll come home with all of the food that, very intentionally packed food, and instead had some very sugary choices. And I've also heard that many students are gaining weight. There's trends towards obesity because of that. Nothing to add.
Okay. Naomi or Patrick? Naomi, go ahead.
Well, one is I support food for all of our students. I mean, I think, as Bridget has said, that how important it is for learning and for long-term healthy development of our students, right? But some kids actually need it because this is their only source of food. And there are many kids who may have other resources where it is not as vital. So I have to be careful how I phrase this, and it's not as easy as it sounds. But there are, when we look at our the socioeconomics of our district, there is a huge range of like Peggy talked about, like just even looking at home costs, or to buy a home, what that looks like, right? And so, we've had since the pandemic, since we went to free meals for all students, we had one school that had a 478% increase in the number of meals that we serve at that school. And it's probably a school that may have the students may have access to meals from home, right? And so unfortunately, because for me, I would love to reallocate some of those funds, but then it becomes very, how do we do it equitably? How do we not, so it's like I said, it's not as easy as it sounds, but it is, how do we then put maybe monies to those food monies to transportation? But you can't do it, right? So it is, there's inequities all around that we have to look at, and look at how do we address them so that we still have equity for all of our students. And I'm not sure if I'm making sense, but it is some of the things that I see personally anyway.
I did want to jump in. Eileen Laib brought up at another meeting I was in this week, where she was mentioning to Senator Wahhab's staffer that being able to focus on not just attracting buyers, but like on actual student nutrition, that we have an opportunity to like really lean in on like high quality, highly nutritional food. And Senator Wahhab does have with a couple other people, Assemblymember Berman and Assemblymember Rivas, they have some legislation on that. So any individual can go through that portal and sign on and say that they support this legislation to clean things up. But I will say something, like in my own neighborhood, the lovely little Cherry Chase students, they were complaining I went to a health and wellness meeting, and I said this in an open session, so this is not like in any way a Brown thing, but the Cherry Chase students were complaining. They were complaining that their sugar cereal was not available, and the PE coach empathized because he was saying like, hey, he said, I used to work in food service, and the parents should be informed that student menu choices are available. Well, then we dug a little deep. Then someone from one of the Title I schools spoke up and said, oh yeah, you know, our youngest learners actually don't have access to student nutrition at the morning recess that we as a district have scheduled for them. And that was because they needed to split up how people use the playground equipment, and this in one silo, they did not have control over the other silos times charged, right? So like they could not get the students of having the cafeteria open when the students were available, right? And so that's just not acceptable, right? So now we're working that out. Well, if the little cherry cheese people hadn't been so upset about their sugar cereal, we would have never heard about that. And like they felt entitled. So even though I agree with what Naomi's saying, there's lots of people who have the most beautiful lunches that come to school. Like they are just like the origami, like the gorgeous, like guilt-inducing lunch boxes, right? Like I could never create something that beautiful for my children. So even though some families are able to do that for their kids, we have other kids who they're hanging out. Someone at the Ed Foundation meeting said to me, they were hanging out at the bus stop after school. They had been dropped off near Vargas, and there was a food truck there for a Vargas event. And the kids said, oh yeah, I wish I could get something. And they said, well, just eat when you get home. And they said, oh, we don't have any food anyway. Like, I mean, that's just like word on the street. It's still happening. So we just need to be very aware, very intentional about providing dignity so that nobody has to be that kid who needs lunch.
Yeah.
And that's a big issue for us.
Patrick, we haven't heard from you.
I'll just say that, when I really appreciate everything that's sort of being discussed today. When I was a student, I was very homeless actually, and food insecure. We didn't have any options that we do today, but the Anza College, just before the pandemic, I believe, had dedicated a permanent site for our food pantry, and it's been very well attended. In fact, students have utilized it for over 3,500 meals in the last academic year alone, serving over 700 students. I recognize that there's a lot of bureaucratic barriers to this, and so it's always sort of at equal times frustrating and emotional when we talk about these issues, and especially as policymakers and board members, we want to just sort of get in there right away and just help deal with the issues and help sort of move away some of those barriers. But I'm really happy to report that we're partnering very closely with West Valley Community Services, who has also provides our students hot meals a few times a month, where they have their mobile food pantry. And I can leave some more information on the chat about how to donate to the food pantry as well. But that having a dedicated space, allowing students to also pick up grocery cards so they can have a little bit more dignity. All these issues are still very stigmatized. When we talk about them, even in a policy perspective, there's a lot of stigmatism in trying to get the real data and trying to actually address some of the issues. And so that's a little bit of sort of what we're doing. But we've got 40% of our students who come to us who are housing insecure and food insecure. And so a lot of them, are just really struggling. That's why we've instituted our grocery card pickup, where they can just pick up a grocery card and sort of go shopping for themselves. One of the bureaucratic barriers that we've pulled away is we don't have an ask policy. If someone walks in, we're not asking if they're on the free and reduced lunch. We're not asking, anything. They're coming to the food pantry, and we set it up like a grocery store, just like West Valley Community Services does. And you just walk in and pick up things, or you can come pick up your grocery card and go grocery shopping for yourself. And we've been really fortunate to have that support from the Board of Trustees and have that support from our administrators. But those are sort of examples that I just like to touch on this subject.
Yeah. Thank you, Patrick. Looks, Eileen, you had your hand up, and then Gail, before we move into questions. Is that Eileen?
Yes, thank you. I wanted to, this has been touched upon a lot by everyone who's spoken so far, but I really want to highlight how the school lunch issue is something where if we don't close the gaps, it's the kids who need it the most that fall through. It's the kids who can't afford to bring a bagged lunch. If we don't provide adequate nutrition in our meals, we're sending these kids to school, to their classrooms hungry, and kids can't learn like that. My son has ADHD. It would be cruel for me to send him to class, to his teacher, with a sugary cereal, and I'm aware of that. But this is how we are able to send the kids to school because of a variety of reasons. Peggy touched upon the nutrition of our meals, and this is something that I learned as a trustee, but this is something that's mandated to some extent by the federal government. We have a grain minimum that we're required to provide kids at breakfast every day. So even as someone who is, a California health nut and would prefer that kids eat avocado toast and eggs for breakfast, that's not something we're allowed to do. Kids, we can't do that as a school district because there's not enough grain in there. This is something that I think should be talked about and something that's important because especially for the kids who need it most, the kids who only get nutrition at school, this is what we're teaching them. This is what we're teaching them a breakfast looks like. This is how we're teaching them to eat. So even though they get nutrition in science or in their elementary schools later and learn about this is what they see every day and this is what they experience, and they think it's a pan dulce and a juice is breakfast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, and the devil's in the details in this. Absolutely. So thank you, Eileen. Gail, you had a comment or question?
Yeah, two things. One, I haven't gotten an answer on when the kids get to Fremont, when they take public transportation, can they still get breakfast? That's an issue. And then I forgot my other one. Oh, little kids. Do little kids know that they can get food at school, or do they have to be told? Because I'm thinking little, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds. So how do they find out about the program so that they know that they get something to eat? And then the other question I have is it breakfast? I know Columbia School serves breakfast and lunch for all kids up to 18, no questions asked. So in the other schools, is it breakfast and lunch? Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, so Bridget and Naomi, it sounds like those are in your bailiwick.
So for the high school district for Fremont, I mean, if the students get to school on time, they should be able to access, right? And what we have is brunch and lunch as opposed to breakfast and lunch.
Okay.
And then for our schools, our Title I schools, most of them qualify for a takeaway dinner. And at some point, I'm not sure if it's still continued right now. There was an expansion for a while of weekend meals. So I'm not sure if that is still going on, but they've usually put out a program called Seamless Summer, and we advertise that pretty heavily. And those programs are pretty well used. But as far as like whether or not how children find out about it, it's part of their routine and their orientation. The teachers take them over and show them what to do, and the kids see what one another is getting and they want to eat that. So that's how they know. We actually have a ton of newcomers this year, and that's been a little challenging because we really have to orient them to everything that's available, including basic needs, availabilities. So, we're, as part of our equity process, I think we're looking at, right now our leaders, our cabinet, and all of our principals are doing equity training this year. And the idea is to kind of look at a baseline at the end of this year, and then next year start really looking at where we can improve those equitable practices, and meet the needs of the kids where they are, and the families, like how we can leverage those partnerships and improve communication. So
Great.
We have a lot
Thank
of
you.
work ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Did that answer the question for you, Gail?
Yeah, I think the nutrition part, which is really important, I think that's a whole different advocacy route that we have to take in terms of making the meals more nutritious. Because God knows sometimes I don't eat nutritious breakfast either, but that's that.
Okay, thanks, Gail. Mike, do we have any other questions that are in the chat?
Well, there are a number of questions that have been asked and answered in the chat. I don't know if we want to go over all of them. I encourage people to look in the chat. We have a very informed group, so as soon as a question is asked, we're getting an answer here. Yeah, I think it's probably easier just for people to look at the chat for the questions and the answers.
Okay. Okay, well, we're right on time to then move on to the next round of issues in general. You've touched on some of these already, but it is the school location issues. And I think, Patrick, if you would kind of comment on this as we kick this off, and then we'll go back through the other areas, because you've got some oversight for that.
So part about, I don't know if it's possible to bring up that map again, because I think when we're talking, I'm a visual learner. So when we're talking about location and getting into sort of long-term solutions on location, I think it might be good to just revisit that if possible. If not, no worries.
So Peggy, that would mean you would have to share
Let me find it.
your screen if
Sorry about
that's
that.
possible.
That's okay. I'll find it.
That would be great. Thank you.
Until just now. Anyways, so we saw that map from earlier, and sort of, if we sort of go back to my initial comments about the siloed policy conversations that the community college district and all of our districts kind of have had for the past several decades up until sort of recently, where I feel like we've all got a good grasp on getting to know one another. And I think like many have mentioned, there is opportunities here that I think we just need to be more creative on. For the community college district, not many of us know in the community that Foothill Anza also has gifted the old blue cube in our location just north of, I don't know if we can zoom in, I don't know if you all can see where the Moffitt Business Park is there in North Sunnyvale, but that's where we have a lot of substantial amount of property that we've acquired from the federal government via the Department of Education. We call it our Sunnyvale Center. And I'll put this in the chat as well, so you can kind of take a look at the brand new facility that we have built, as well as several parcels around it that are parking lot, as well as undeveloped, acreage of land that the community college district now has. And so when we talk about, where, the sort of inequality and inequity issues on location about serving our students. I live in Lakewood, by the way. We have to, I think, get creative and talk to as many partners as I can. I really think that the community college district can have a role to play in helping maybe solve some of these issues, whereby we can, other community colleges across the country have done a dual enrollment high school, where the high school utilizes buildings from the community college, again, that dual enrollment program, but it's a sort of a magnet school for dual enrollment. Every high school student is enrolled in community college, so they're using the community college facilities, but it's essentially a high school for students to also get college credit at the same time. I would love to see a magnet high school in Northern Sunnyvale, whether it be at the old Sunnyvale High School location or at our location, but sort of throwing sort of ideas out there, I think, is sort of how we get started. Whereas traditionally it's, we're the community college, so these are K through 12 problems, so we'll deal with the students when they finally get to us. But that's not, I don't think, that's no longer an avenue that we can afford to be looking at, and we need to be thinking about how we can be good partners to the community, how we can be good partners to early childhood education. And I think part of that is understanding that we have land and we have resources that if we can do intervention, if we can help students earlier, then they're only going to be more successful by the time they get to us. And so we do have a sort of deed restriction for the next 40 or 50 years because that was gifted to us by the Department of Ed, because I think it used to be the old military installation, that we have to use it for education purposes. But I really think that, you know, either building it in conjunction, again, we have the bond dollars thanks to this community. And I will say again, our Measure G is the largest bond measure in the history of the county, passed in early 2020, just before the pandemic, for $898 million. Sunnyvale won that bond for us. Cupertino did not. They voted it down. And so, you know, I want, you know, as the Sunnyvale representative, I want to invest significantly in Sunnyvale resources to help our students. Because, by the way, there are you know, students, even though that, you know, they may not be old enough to go to, you know, college yet. And so I still think we need to broaden our mission and broaden our horizons to really work closely with parent groups, community members, the high school district, the elementary, middle schools. We need to be throwing ideas out there. So that's sort of some ideas I have. I've also been in conversation with Google because they own a lot of the land around that area. I think they might be revising how much they want to build the commercial space these days. But we should be in partnership with them and say, you know, we can work with you on some Google funded bus shuttles for our high school and community college students, so that, you know, Sunnyvale or FHUC doesn't have to burden the one-time $250,000 costs and ongoing costs, and maybe gifting some of their land around our land in northern Sunnyvale and offering some sort of solution to our high school districts. And so those are sort of the pie in the sky ideas when in terms of location, but I just wanted to offer that up because I don't think a lot of people know that we have that location, that it's currently being used for our allied health programs. But again, we have also underdeveloped parcels around us that we own and that Google owns. So I think there's some, when we think of long-term strategies on locations, I want us to sort of recognize that there are other options here that if we have political will to do it and the organizations to do it, I think we can move the conversation.
Yeah, and there are already some movements in that direction with some of our high school students and going through there on a welding program with Makers Nexus. And Naomi, it seems like you would be a natural follow-on for this. Any ideas that you since you're bouncing around ideas for this?
Yeah, well, and I appreciate Patrick and Community College District for their willingness to look at different options in partnership, and I think that's important. I think the community actually needs to come together to look at all these different options in it, and not just building a new school in North Sunnyvale. That is something that I would love to see happen. I'm not sure that is something that will be able to happen in 10 years or so, 15, but let me say a couple of things. One is that we are declining enrollment. In the last 4 or 5 years, we've lost 1,000 students. So when I was first elected, we were at 11,000 students. We are now at 10,000. The biggest declines are our most southern schools. So that would be at Limerick and Monte Vista. The demographers project that our areas of growth are in Sunnyvale, and specifically North Sunnyvale. I've asked the question about, like Patrick said, you know, taking over Sunnyvale High School. And I've even gone further and said, what about closing or switching, having the King's Academy use the Limbrook site and we move the high school there, because I can tell you, as far as budget looks like, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I don't think we can support 6 high schools. And so, but the discussion to close a high school is going to be very contentious. I can tell you. Whether you know, but there are a lot of reasons why we can't go into or would not be easy to go into Sunnyvale High School, and some of that is because of state DSA, or the architectural, the state that regulates public schools, and it is a safe site, but it was a Superfund site before. Private schools operate under different regulations, and because we're a public school, we would have to do a lot of different things to get that school to standard. And so it is then, you know, at least temporarily looking at different options. And then one of the arguments is, well, then, you know, all of our 5 high schools right now sit on, is it five, anyway, a big chunk of land. And because we are comprehensive high schools, we have football fields and baseball fields and all this other stuff. If we were to build in North Sunnyvale, there's not space for that. So, you know, then how do we be equitable and tell the North Sunnyvale students that they have to, you know, drive to get to a football field or a baseball field or a bigger gym, that type of thing. There are other things that you know, if the possibility, and again, these are all things that are, I guess when I think about things, I think of all different options and whether they're possible or not, but I think we have to explore. One is, you know, we know that most of the growth will probably be with young kids. So that means that probably, and Bridget and Eileen can correct me if I'm wrong, most of those kids, it's elementary schools that are going to be needed first, because that's who's going to be moving in. And the high school population won't increase probably for about 15 to 20 years. That's what I'm hearing. And so then if they build maybe some schools in North Sunnyvale for K through 8, can we take over a school, Sunnyvale school, have at least one of their schools to have a high school there? So like I said, and Patrick, pie in the sky things, but I think that's where we're at. We need to look at all these different options to see what's going to be best for our students today and long-term wise. But
Well,
no, I'm just going to say it is going to be some really hard, difficult discussions, and we can't forget the political will in the south part of our county, and that's where power and privilege has been held for many, many years in our district. That's coming from a private citizen, not
yeah. And nobody wants to give up power anyway, anytime, anyhow, anyway. So Bridget, you had your hand up. I was going to call on you next anyway, so go ahead, and then Peggy. And okay, I'm not ignoring you, but Gail will bring you in the questions. Okay. So.
Okay, yeah. So thanks. So I would just echo Naomi's comment. It's true, we are growing more in our, you know, we are seeing a lot of very young children. I think Bishop had to overload an entire kindergarten class out to Fairwood. We're seeing a lot of movement even within Sunnyvale. We have declining enrollment, but you know, we got a new grade level this year. We got TK, which childcare is an issue for us and for our families, especially for these families. So, you know, the under-resourced families. So we are really struggling to try to partner childcare with our early learners. But, you know, I guess I would just say that probably that Sunnyvale is gearing up for a fight here. I mean, there's just no way around it. Just to be like, Lynbrook is their #1 ranked school. Like, it's out of all the schools in Fremont Union High School District. So even if it were not the southernmost and smallest school, I think it would be very challenging for them, like, talking about switching. So, I mean, there are a lot of challenges, but I would just say that this is not just about growth. This is about opportunity for the students who live there. I can't, Peggy joined me, and we went and talked to a class of kids in Columbia Middle School, because they're going to get ready to do, like, they're always doing public service projects and writing projects and things like that. And just talking to them about it, they were, so there were about eight eighth graders in the room out of 30 kids, and they were shocked that they're really excited about getting a bus pass. They thought that sounded cool and fun, but they were shocked when they were learning about all the support that the city of Sunnyvale, or the community here, puts into voting in bond measures, and and we have all these kids that are just completely underserved right now, and will be for years. So the other thing is that when we're talking about Moffett Park or other schools, we know we're going to need more schools out there. Our district's already talked to the city about it. We need the land. We're willing to go out and raise money for a bond and sell it like crazy and develop the school and build it and everything like that. So we're excited about doing that and ready to go. And we would love to partner sort of similar to the district that Santa Clara Unified was able to do. They're a unified district, but they have a middle school. Maybe it's K through 8, and then a high school, but they have everything, and they share a lot of resources. They share all of their classified staff that's not certificated staff. And you could imagine there could be partnerships where we could share things. But I think also, I was talking to a trustee from Los Altos Unified, or not Los Altos School District. They're a K through 8 district, and they're expanding. And they've moved into the north side of their town. They took over the Kohl's department store. They were able to broker some sort of a land deal where they have a number of acres. They're going to keep a 10-acre site, but they don't need the retail credits. So they're selling that back. They're walking away, instead of being 140 million for all in, they're looking at probably paying about 23 million. So I don't think, like, spaces that I would never think to go take over a Kohl's or a Safeway or some sort of retail like that. But once she said that, I was thinking, like, oh, well, we have businesses that are like, what's happening with Fry's? Like, come on. Like, there might be other places that we haven't even thought we could possibly access before that might be able to. I think they did some exchanging they work really close with the city. They work with the county. They work with the state. So I think I love it that we're all coming together. I understand, also, I will say that they have a different, it's almost like, for a nonprofit, a school district to be a nonprofit, how they do negotiations is sort of a profit sharing thing. So even the teachers and staff would not be on board of having an extra school. But I would just like to remind everybody that I personally would not wait for a big influx of students. I think we could say that that's coming, but we need to serve the students who are already there. That's just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Bridget. And Peggy, if you would wrap up this little segment, and then we'll go to the comments and questions.
Yeah, there's a few things I wanted to mention. So I absolutely agree with this concept of shared resources and partnership, and having creative solutions. The district presented a feasibility study of the comprehensive new high school in North Sunnyvale, like two different proposals. One was to take over the King's Academy and build there, and one was to develop on a to be determined site. And they said it was, $500 million. That's how much it would be. So even if we as a community had that will to, really want to build a new site up here or create something, we have to, the district has to do it, that's within their realm. So that might also include us, like, having more representation on the board. These are decisions that are made at that level. So I wanted to mention that we have to we have to influence that decision making over there as well. And something else I wanted to mention is that in North Sunnyvale, in my neighborhood, there are so many students that do, and so many families that do not use the public school system at all. And so the high school enrollments, those projections, they're based on the elementary enrollments, but already even before the kids were to go to kindergarten, they're being enrolled at private schools. So what we have in the population, the enrollment is not actually representative of the populations, and I think that we're doing we are not really providing public school education if everybody that has enough money can opt out of it and are choosing to do so. And there's different there's perception around there. There's also like after school childcare is a big issue with public schools. It's very hard to do. Sunnyvale is zoning for at least 12,000 new residences in the next 8 years. And we need to, not only like what Bridget said, we already have the need right now, but we need to be considering that. And so that means decisions have to be made soon, in order to be prepared for those residents. So yeah, I agree on these like creative options of kind of better articulation between levels of schools. I think there's ways to do it, to bring the schooling to the North Sunnyvale residents, but we will have to be kind of nimble and creative and be willing to look outside the box and of course involve the whole community, which is something I'm looking forward to doing.
And starting off to a good start there too. Thank you, Peggy. Gail, you had a comment first, and then Linda, comment or question?
Yeah, I think the thing we haven't talked about that we need to talk about maybe another time is finance, because my little antennas went nuts. If I want to know more about where we're putting these buildings, especially if those schools are having decreased enrollment. I do not want to increase the inequity of the school districts. And the other thing I think we need to figure out is if we do get transportation to Fremont, that's only a drop in the bucket about how to stop the inequity. So we have to come up with other solutions about how to get these kids the resources they need to be successful in school. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Okay, Linda?
Yeah, I guess I wanted to know, how far away are some of these pie in the sky ideas? Like, for example, Patrick, how far away is a dual enrollment school for the high schools and Foothill Anza at the Sunnyvale Center? Like the buildings there, the dual enrollment program exists in Foothill Anza. How far away is a program like that? Is that 5 years out, 2 years out? Like,
well, considering most people don't know that we even have the site, it's a long-term solution, right? That's 4, 5, 10 years out, but we do have a site. We do have, again, a large building that is being used for our allied health. So program right now that we could, a policy decision would be to move that and to provide a magnet high school or an all dual enrollment high school. Again, we have a substantial amount of bond dollars thanks to the community for supporting, the generous support from the community to invest that. We're also experiencing low enrollment as well. So we're sort of reevaluating our facilities master plan and how we take a look at this. I think several factors need to be in play. I think we need to, if that is a solution or a potential solution that could be had, we have a building already. So, can we accommodate, a large high school, automatically? No, but we, if a decision could be made to start out small for a couple of hundred of students while we have that facility and then maybe grow out there, then we can talk about that. We can talk with our other trustees in Sunnyvale and our high school district to look at, a future bond to expand it at a later date, or perhaps we can share some of our bond dollars, because again, it's only helping us. If you're a dual enrolled, 9th, 10th, 11th, or 12th grader, we're getting funding from the state of California on that. So there is a large incentive for the community colleges to have a dual enrollment program with your high school students, because we would be, it's an existing funding source that the state will reimburse us on. And we want the enrollment because we're not a basic aid district. We rely on butts in the seat to get to pay our bills and to pay our students, faculty, and staff for that. So, as well as all of our categorical programs. So I think there needs to be politically will. I think there needs to be, a study session that I'd love to call with a possible joint study session with the high school district and the community college district that we can look into having over the summer or early fall, where, we work with C and other community groups to make sure maybe it's in the evening and have really robust conversation about what sort of these options mean. And they don't all have to be scary, and they don't all have to be, well, the solution is to close the high school. That is a solution that I think should be on the table. But there's also the community college solution, the dual enrollment solution. There's also, a lot of, there's a solution where we could perhaps look at another site as well, or again, provide the bond dollars. Naomi brought up a really good point about how, the King's Academy is largely exempt from a lot of the requirements. Well, it may be pretty cost prohibitive, but, again, maybe the community college can look into helping revitalize some of that sources of income for, helping get maybe that district up to code. And maybe it's not sort of us using our facility itself, but again, thinking outside that box and saying, well, these are the resources that we have. We want to serve your students too. We want to equip your students. Let's put everything on the table. And that's where we need to start, right? I think everything needs to be on the table, which is why as a community college trustee, I'm even invited to this panel, because some would say it's not relevant. I would say it's absolutely relevant to have us here, because we have the resources and we have the political will right now to engage with you on these conversations, and not just say, best of luck to you on that equity thing, but that no, like your taxpayer dollars fund our community college system. We educate your students too. And so and we, by the way, will get reimbursed, and we will get money to educate these students earlier if they're a dual enrolled student. And so why wouldn't we have a vested interest in helping be a part of the solution?
Okay, I just have a comment, Patrick. You and Merlin Srinivasan need to get together with Teresa Ong, and you have some pilot issues going on there right now. And you should know about those as well. So Naomi, you had a comment. So
yeah, I wanted to go back and touch on some other things too. One is we have been kind of a sleepy district, and so have flown under the radar for many years, mostly because we have been a high achieving district, right? And so with that, people are not showing up to our school board meetings. They're not looking at our agendas. They're not reading what's going to be voted on. And so one is, I ask, the community to I guess, re-engage again in what the high school district is doing. With that, one of the things that has come up, and I can say it freely because it was at a board meeting, and it's now public record. Our bond measures that have passed, we are looking, what was recommended for use for some of our bonds are for Lynbrook High School, which is to build 3 new buildings. Peggy alluded to that. One is our science building that was passed a couple of years ago. and so that was on different bond dollars. The second one is our Voyager program, which work with our special needs kids. Now, with that program, it is not specific to Lindbergh High School students. It is students that come from throughout the district. And then the third one with our new bonds that just passed is our maker space, and I have questioned the need to build 2 new buildings when we have such dramatic decline in our enrollment. Now, I understand, some of the things we had committed to. These were not so much committed. I understand that there are things that we have to do, but what my concern is that we could maybe look at using those bond dollars in our northern schools, right? Whether it's Homestead or Fremont. And, I will always support modernization and renovations and things like that to keep, even if the campus sits empty, we have to maintain those buildings, right? But building new, I question building and not reallocating already existing space. I question, especially when our enrollment declines. That means there's less kids in the classrooms, right? And so we have classrooms that might or could be repurposed for something else. I voted no to move ahead with that. I was the only one lone vote that said no. And so those are the things that I think if the community were there and questioned, it is a lot easier to look at, right? And seeing when Sunnyvale is the one who helped pass that bond, and the area that is going to benefit were the ones that voted heavily to not pass that bond. There are some inequities there, right? So.
Thank you, Naomi. Eileen, and then Merle, and then we'll go to last words for the panel, from the panel. Eileen, you're muted.
Hi, sorry about that. I wanted to give some numbers to the things we're talking about. So for the prospect of building a brand new high school in Moffett Park, the estimated cost of that would be $490 million. For reclaiming the Sunnyvale High School site, the cost of that is expected to be $545 million. So even more for a smaller campus because they'd be adjusting everything. And then for building the anticipated K-8 that we're going to be needing in the Moffett Park area, the anticipated cost for that is going to be $140 to $200 million. Within the Sunnyvale School District, we're going to be probably looking at bonds and parcel taxes, bonds to pay for this, but we also are expecting the developers who are going to be developing the Moffett Park area to chip in some portion of this, because Moffett Park is anticipated to have an extra 20,000 housing units, which for reference is the size of the entire city of Cupertino. It's going to have different distribution. That's going to be apartments and townhouses, but apartments and townhouses have children. I live in a townhouse. This is a townhouse. I have a child here. Not right now, he's with grandpa, but generally. And so we're anticipating a lot of new students from that. And and of course, we're going to need at least one school up there. So those are things that we're looking at. Those are things that we know are important. And that's going to be, and that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money that's going to be necessary no matter how you slice it. So just wanted to give some numbers there.
Thank you very much, Eileen. And Merle?
Thanks a lot, Tara. First of all, even before you said Patrick and I have to meet, I had already messaged him and then asked for a meeting, and then we will be meeting soon. And then this is regarding equity and then creating opportunities. I am in touch with or in discussion with our economic development director to find out, obviously she has connection with all the businesses in Sunnyvale, to make sure that we can come up with opportunities for our high schoolers to participate in our ecosystem as such. And then I did visit Fremont Foothill College, Sunnyvale campus. They have wonderful programs. Somehow it's not highlighted. That's what I feel. We need to come together, the school district, school, for Anza Foothill College, cities, and all those things. That's my 2 cents. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Murli. And now we'll just close with the panel. We're bumping up against the end of our time, and so last word, 1 minute each. And who would like to start? Naomi, you had your hand up, so I don't know.
That was from before, but
Okay.
I can go. I think part of what we need to work on is getting someone from North Sunnyvale elected to our school board. As I've said before, there are, out of the 5 of us, 3 of us live in Sunnyvale, but I am the only one north of Remington and the only one whose children went to Sunnyvale School District. So North Sunnyvale has historically not been represented, and North Sunnyvale trustee who is Latino has historically not been on our school board. So that is important. We need to get ready for the 2024 election, and we probably need to get someone identified quickly, especially if they're going to run in 2024 by, I would say, October, November, to start getting them ready. We just passed a resolution to go to trustee area elections. And so that will be, we will be working on that. And so we are, as I think someone alluded, as a current school board, we did not create this problem, but it's up to us to lead and make it right. And so I am committed to doing that. But we'll need all of your help to move that along. So it is, there are things that we can go fast on, and there are things that are going to take longer, and being able to recognize that, and it's the long-term goal, but it always with making sure that all of our kids are served. So
Thank you, Naomi. Bridget, or?
Sure. Yeah, I would just, as I was thinking about this conversation, I'm just so, it's such a great opportunity to be able to talk and have, all the different trustees here and community activists here. And, I just want to say that I'm personally expecting the next election to be a little uglier in general, just because of politics at the national level. And, I think that the community has been very supportive, but I would hope that this group would understand that, like, the more we try to dig into these problems and unearth what they are, there is going to be some pushback of, like, why isn't this fixed immediately? Or, I mean, it's just the inequities are there, and to fix them, we need to see them. And once we see them, they're going to be out there. So I just hope that as we talk about this stuff, if we bring up data, we bring up points for correction. I guess I'm just saying that, like, I'm really glad I'm not running in the next election. I did have some people file recall papers on me during the pandemic, and fortunately they were not very good at it. They tried to remove me and Michelle from the high school district board, wrong district, and then they got people to sign. They only had 10 people, and it turned out some of them were not voters, whatever. So I mean, they weren't very good. I took them like 4 times to even get the letter, and then they went on vacation, so they didn't.
Your time is up.
Okay, so anyway, I just want to say that, like, for us, like for Naomi to step out here is just a very brave thing, and all the boards are going to need, all the elected officials, including the council members, including all the school board members, are just going to need to be very brave and do the right thing, even if it costs them their seat the next election. And if it does cost us our seat the next election, we're going to have people to backfill us who are ready to go. Because the work, we really need that work to continue, and it may be beyond our term. So I just hope you all support us. Thanks.
Thank you, Bridget. Peggy, would you like to go next, or would you like to wrap up at the end?
I'll go. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me here. As we've already discussed, there's so much that when we think about inequity, there's so much work to do here. I expect C to be around for the long term, way past when, you know, I'm able to do all this. And I encourage you to join our group, our listserv. It will tell you like when to show up to those board meetings or what the study session is about transportation. I've just really enjoyed this conversation. It makes me feel very excited that the community is interested and engaged. Naomi has referred to North Sunnyvale as like a sleeping giant, you know, that we're beginning to wake. It is kind of hard to wake people, I've found, but there is a lot of passion around this. And of course, for our children, this is something we need to keep working on. There are short-term, midterm, long-term goals that we have. If you look at the slides that will go out later, you'll look at you know, areas of our advocacy, and there's like certain low-hanging fruit that we could maybe get done for the next school year. And then of course, when we're talking about, you know, bigger goals such as a new location, we're just going to have to keep trucking at that and keep being creative and looking at partnerships. It was really nice being here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peggy. And Patrick, get the wrap up for the panel.
Well, thank you all so much. Really appreciate it. Really want to highlight my colleagues, Bridget, Naomi, Peggy. Thank you for these courageous conversations. They are courageous talking about school closures. We can only do a quick Google search in Cupertino, or talking about districted area elections. When we talk about Santa Clara, another quick Google search, you'll see just how controversial, just how many lawsuits and pulling away from civil conversations that this normally is going to, you know, we know it's going to happen, not if it happens. We know that these are really hot button issues. And so, you know, Foothill Anza wants to be part of the solution. I think in a way that, you know, just to give you all an example, I worked with Naomi, who works for our county supervisor, to have them vote just last year on allocating a mental health and county health run health clinic at our Anza site, because the West Valley don't have a county clinic, has easier access to VTA, $80 million. And it's going to train our Anza nurses. Now, why is Patrick going off topic? I'm not, because normally we would silo, and that is a solution to deliver free healthcare for our students, free abortion services for our students, free mental health care services for our students, that is the county is already providing, but just not in these sort of equitable areas. So, you know, these are solutions that we can work on and we can fix if we work together. And I'm really, I know this is just the beginning of a very long sort of relationship with these issues and education. So I just want to say thank you.
Well, thank you all so very much for laying the foundations for further exploration about the inequities and showing us about the depth and breadth of the issues that you all are facing and that we all face together in terms of education for all. So thank you so much for your participation, and I'll turn the meeting back over to Crystal. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Tara, and all of the panelists. This is a super frank and engaging discussion, and I really appreciate all of you being here and willing to talk about these issues, and to all the club members who joined, and as well as guests. Just putting in the chat if you would like to join the Democratic Club. We're always looking for new members, that I put the link to join, or if you are already a member and you would like to invite others to join, there's the link. So we are at 4 o'clock, and if there's no other urgent announcements, I'm going to close the meeting, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Look forward to the next meeting in person. Very
Bye-bye.
excited. Where is it going to be? You said it's at someone's clubhouse. Where is it?
Somebody's Plaza Del Rey. I thought it was that Gail was arranging, but we'll send out the notification when it's confirmed.
Okay, awesome. Thanks so much.
Thanks again.
Can't wait to chat with all these other people.
Work hard.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.